Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special occasion that is the launch of our publication Drawing Heritages. We are delighted to meet you all today, although virtually, and almost 2 years after the meeting that started it all in 2019. So, thank you all for your attendance. And we are also very much honored today by the presence of our guests and eminent speakers from whom we will short a little bit more in shortly. Firstly, however, I would like to say how excited we are for having had the opportunity to undertake this project. We are also deeply grateful for having encountered such generous support and reply, both from the participants and from our university. And in this context, we would like to thank to all the contributors of the book for sharing their research and their art, as well as to the UNESCO chair of the University of Évora, Heritage Doctoral Network, CIDUS and Shire Research Centers. We would also like to thank Dr. Mariana Soler and our friend Paula Kramer Lima for their collaboration in finalizing the book. For being a driving force behind the project, for his support, guidance, and most of all, trust in our somewhat unconventional ideas. We would like to offer gratitude to our supervisor, Professor Felipe Temudo Barata. And personally, and most importantly, I would like to thank Sajad for his collegiality, as well as for all the efforts and enthusiasm invested in this project. So thank you. And on this note, I now invite Sajad to take over and to tell you a little bit more about the publication itself.
Thank you. While I talk, I want to share some images of the book. So I try to share. I start sharing my screen. Good afternoon. Once again, I welcome everyone to today's event. I also welcome those who connect through YouTube live streaming. But unfortunately, it's not working right now. We are doing that in Facebook, and we upload the video later. So my deepest thanks to everyone who made the production of this book possible, including authors, artists, research centers, and our supervisors. It is a fruit of the international workshop in 2019 that happened in Évora just before we started to know the coronavirus and stopped traveling and gathering to perform academic activities in person. The workshop was organized in the methodological framework of my colleague and co-author, Nevena Tatovic's PhD project, a field trip for drawing in situ at the archaeological site, Almender Lake, followed the presentation and discussion session of the workshop. Most of the drawings from the field trip are placed in the second part of the book. There are marvelous in situ drawings, I promise you. The first part of the book has 6 valuable and contemporary articles. Let me read out the titles of the articles as a teaser. Being Resident, Gordon House, 2018-19, by Duncan Bullen. The Inner Mountain by Mario Linares. Hand Sketching in Architecture by Pedro Alves and Pedro Loureiro. On Graphic Intent, a Perambulation by Manuel Joao Ramos. The Somatic Urban Landscape and its Intangible Heritage, a community-based approach to landscape representation by Ana Maria Moya Pelletiero. The Experience of the Place, Transcending Vision by Filipa Pontes. 2 of our authors, Professor Duncan Bullen and Professor Manuel Joao Ramos, was supposed to be present, but Professor Ramos is a little bit late. So we are expecting to hear from them in this session. So now I would like to invite Professor Felipe Temudo Barata the founder, member, and representative of UNESCO Chair for Intangible Heritage and Traditional Know-how, Linking Heritage, as the publisher to officially announce the book launching. Professor Felipe.
Thank you. Okay, I am very pleased to welcome you all. And I just say here two things. And the first thing is to thank everybody to participate that is participating in this session. Also to thanks to Mariana, the support, the technical support to this meeting. And second, I'd like very much to ask to Professor Paulo Rodrigues, the director of Shire, because he understood the interesting part of this book. And so I must publicly thank him. But let me, in this welcome part of the program, I'd like very much to thank Nevena Tatovic and Sajad Hossein, because it is curious, but after coordinating, I don't know, hundreds of theses, they teach me, and I will try to explain in the end what they have teach me, and the work they have to do, the meeting, and to produce this book. I just want to publicly congratulate them and to salute with a warm congratulations these two beautiful students. Thank you very much. I think it's Professor Paulo Rodrigues that speak now. No?
Yes. I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Felipe. And before continuing with the program, I would just like to invite all the participants of the Zoom session and also all those who are watching us live. They can send their questions and we will discuss them at the end of the meeting. And now I have a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Professor Paulo Simões Rodrigues. Professor Rodrigues, she is director of the Heritage Studies Doctoral Network and Program, which is coordinated between the University of Évora and Faculty of Fine Arts in Lisbon, and with the support of the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology. He is also director of SHAIA, Center for Art History and Artistic Research, and assistant professor at the University of Évora. He completed his PhD in art history and currently works mostly in the areas of art history, architecture and urbanism history, virtual archaeology, heritage, digital heritage, as well as memory studies and museology. Professor, welcome.
Thank you very much, Nevena. I will be fast, so the important and relevance of the day is to hurt our speakers. So I want only, and I would like to thank Nevena and Sajad, not only for the organization of the book, but mainly for the organization of the book, but also for the organization of the meetings that are in the workshop that is in the basis of this book. It was very important in terms not only of heritage, to the PhD network, but also in the collaboration between the research centers, namely Shire with the UNESCO chair was very important for us. I want to also to stress that the both book and seminars were held in the scope of the heritage program. Heritage program is an interdisciplinary PhD that its main goal is to develop interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary research in the area of heritage, namely between science, exact science and humanities, but also between humanities, in terms to develop good research and to create a common ground between scientific fields and knowledge fields, and to contribute for developing better knowledge and science in the great scientific and the great knowledge field of heritage. In these terms, landscape is a very important research area for us, for UNESCO chair, for Shire, for the University of Évora. University of Évora was pioneer in landscape formation in Portugal, and so it's very important for us. And because landscape is also a multidisciplinary fields of knowledge. And we we all work in heritage by art history, archaeology, architecture, landscape architecture. We have this feeling, this need and this now how to learn to work in heritage with all of these scientific and knowledge fields. And landscape teaches us something very important today, something very important to how we approach heritage in our days in the critical perspective, how to preserve, how to conserve something that is in constant and in constant change and in constant dynamics. And that perspective is very important, because we must have a notion of the past, a notion of the history as a dynamic reality and not a static reality. And we must understand that we are seeing past from the present. Past is past. We are seeing them. We are seeing the past from the present, and we are seeing and study the past, the significance of the past, not the past itself, but the significance of the past in the present. And landscape teach how to work that, how to work something that is dynamic and something is in constant change, in constant dynamics. So with this, I want to underline the importance and the relevance, not only of this meeting, but of the book as the memory and the memory, and when we can find all who was discussed and what was presenting in the book. To finish and to end with to finish my intervention, I would also want to underline the relevance and importance of the PhD students to have the initiative of organizing and these meetings and these books. It's very important. It's a way to them to introduce themselves in the practice of not only of research, but how to discuss and how to also how to communicate that research. It's very important to transfer the knowledge that they are working in their thesis, and they are working in their field of work. And also this international scope of the book, how many people from many geographic areas want to bring their knowledge, their different experiences, and to dialogue with each other is also very important. So I think I want to underline this international scope of the book for us is so very, very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rodriguez, for your insightful words. That was lovely to hear. We would like to hear now from Professor Duncan Bullen. Let me introduce him. Professor Duncan is a deputy head of school in the School of Art, University of Brighton, where he has a responsibility for leading research and enterprise. Duncan's research interests are grounded in the materiality of manual drawing. His research aims to contribute and build upon the discussion that position drawing as a phenomenology, and he situates his research within a comparative context that draws on a convergence of thinking from Eastern and Western philosophies. He places particular value on practice-based research, which situates drawing within a first-person experience-based methodology. Duncan trained in fine arts at Leeds Polytechnic, graduating in 1988. He then completed an MA in printmaking at the Royal College of Art in 91, after which he was a recipient of Prix de Rome scholarship, spending 91 and 2 at the British School at Rome. Duncan has had several solo exhibitions and has participated in many internationally recognized shows, as well as contributing writing in academic journals and published book chapters. Welcome, Professor Duncan.
Thank you very, very much for that introduction. It's so good to see you all again and to see familiar faces. separated as we are by a screen, but it's great to recognize everybody, and it's great to see everybody. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Navina and Shahid for inviting me initially to participate as a keynote speaker. That was a great honor, and one I gladly accepted. I have really fond memories of my few days visiting. The memories will stay with me for a very long time. My trip to Portugal in 2019, I think it was my last trip outside of the UK. Since then, you know, we've been grappling with the consequences of this global pandemic, which I think has given us opportunities to reconsider how we teach, how we research, and opportunities to kind of meet in ways that we maybe weren't anticipating before. So we've speeded along some things there. So just want to take this opportunity to thank you once again for that initial invitation, really much appreciated. And now we have this brilliant publication, which I'm really delighted to be part of. It's as was just mentioned, it's international in its scope, it's ranging in its reach, and it asks some really interesting kind of questions. First the conference and the workshops, and now the ebook, which is, I know, been a fruit of a lot of hard work and collaborative effort on the part of Shahid and Navina, but also Professor Felipe Thamudo Barata, and the UNESCO former UNESCO chairholder and emeritus professor, and supervisor for both Navina and Shahid. So they're not the only ones who've been involved in this, bring this publication together. So everybody here who's part of it, just thank you. I really am delighted to be here today and to be in print in the book. When I got the invitation for the keynote and the subsequent offer to develop the keynote as a chapter, it's one of those chances that you get as a researcher and as an artist, where it enables you to evaluate and expand and reflect upon your thinking and on the body of work that you're producing. These are great opportunities for everyone at whatever stage of one's kind of career. I think they're so again, it's a kind of thank you for making this possible for a range of people. When we come together to do conferences, symposia, workshops, publications, we create new knowledge. We create new ways of thinking and new ways of kind of being, and disciplines can kind of begin to speak, and we begin to understand each other and develop new practices. For me personally, it really helped to develop theoretical and experiential understanding of the idea of drawing as a phenomenology. It's an opportunity to present and publish in this particular forum has really enabled the thinking on a kind of embodied and experiential artistic research. And it supported me to focus this thinking through a drawing methodology, which is meditational and based on kind of mindfulness breathing techniques, which use sort of rhythm and repetition and particular kind of rules as a framework for attuning attention to the present moment experiences and specific environments. I remember the field work and the trip to, I'll pronounce this wrong, but the Almeidas Cromlech architectural site or archaeological site enabled me to really test how this methodology can be transferred to many different types of physical environment. And the methodology that I've been using and have been experimenting with, my hope is that it can be further extended by other researchers to investigate their own kind of experience of place through non-textual outcomes. There's a real dynamic interchange that happens between, for an artist working in a studio and an artist working on a site-specific environment, and that became a really key for me of understanding the processes that drawing can offer. The last speaker just mentioned that we have to understand our heritage as constant change and the dynamics that go with that, and that it's not a static reality. I'm hoping that the drawings and the methodology of the drawings, and what I've come to understand, is that the process can situate one in the very immediate present with the past. It kind of makes a very direct kind of connection there. So the present, being present, is both a sense of how one is in the moment of making a drawing, but also how that moment connects to our histories. So I would just want to say once again, thank you so much for the invitation. It's been a real privilege and honor to be part of this. And congratulations to everybody on the outcome of the publication. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Duncan, for these wonderful and kind words. And continuing in this way, we are pleased to now invite Professor Manuel João Ramos for his talk. Professor Ramos is an associate professor of anthropology and a senior researcher of the Center of International Studies at ISCTE, University Institute of Lisbon. His background is in anthropology and comparative literary studies with a PhD in symbolic anthropology. And in parallel and interwoven with his academic work, Professor also pursues a graphic arts career. Professor Ramos, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I came in late. My fault, and I'm unexcusable for this. So my idea was just to give a few words on, maybe like try to justify the fact that I wrote a text in this book that on the one hand doesn't really correspond to what I presented in the workshop, and on the other hand, itself reflects on the workshop. That is, my text is more a take on my being in the workshop and trying to grapple the issues that were discussed in the workshop than original work. That said, I really enjoyed writing. Well, I really enjoyed the workshop. I enjoyed writing the article. It's a bit provocative, but I wanted to say that it really goes to the heart of two issues that have been with me for a long time. Sometimes they're not highlighted in my work, sometimes they are. One is, as Nevena said, I have I don't know if it's a career. I like drawing. I don't know if I make it a career or not, but I do like drawing, and I draw a lot, or at least I used to draw a lot while traveling. The pandemic has created a new me, in the sense that I don't see myself traveling much more anymore. For the sake of the planet, for the sake of my tranquility, of my back, I really, if someone told me today, do you want to go and visit this, travel there, return to Ethiopia, go to the Seychelles, I would say no. I prefer to stay in my little cocoon, even if I don't draw so much. But this is to say that to an extent, drawing has been part of traveling, and it has been part of my research or my being in the field, in the sense that it helps me organize my thoughts during field work, and this is why I think drawing can be so interesting and important for anthropology. It's not the outcome, and this is what I try to say in my paper. It's not the end product. Artists deal with the end product. Architects deal with the end product. I'd say that to the anthropologist, it is not so much the end product, but the process of drawing that creates the possibility of knowing, even if the drawing is not really related to what I'm actually working on, but it's like a part of my brain that is working the things that my verbal cognition brain is working on its side, and I think that is quite important. That is, it is a memory, a tool for memory, and a tool for organization of thoughts and emotions, and as Tim Ingold would say, to be in the field, to know from the inside of the field. So this has been important to me. The other issue that, and it intersects this very directly, the workshop and the book, is the issue of heritage. And I wanted to say just one or two words on this. When the questions of the intangible heritage and the Convention for the Protection of Intangible Heritage were being discussed in the late 90s internationally, and mainly, of course, as you know, in Paris, there was a total absence of discussion of this issue in Portugal. As you know, and I really appreciate that there's such a lack of discussions in Portugal. We don't have to discuss many things, and I like the way the Portuguese go so easy on intellectual discussions sometimes. But the fact is that there was no discussion in Portugal, and also, well, there was a law. The law for the protection of heritage was already there. In a way, it preceded the convention in Portugal, and it's interesting. But as I said, there was no academic discussion, no intellectual discussion on this issue. And a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and who's now the Secretary of State, and she was the first secretary of the Portuguese embassy in UNESCO. She complained to me. She said, "Well, I'm supposed to voice the Portuguese position here at UNESCO, and there's no Portuguese position. There's no thinking about the issue." So I said to her, "Oh, I can arrange that." It was very irresponsible of me, but I organized a series of workshops and seminars at the Geographical Society to discuss, to try to come up with some ideas on this. And in the end, the result was that I became very, 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 very critical of the notion of intangible heritage, because somehow it didn't really make sense when I related this discussion with the materials that I was working with in Ethiopia. This didn't really make much sense, and in the end, as it turned out to be, the Convention for the Protection of Heritage is more the Convention for the Protection of Tourism than anything. It's very driven by economic interests that relate to tourism and don't really relate to the protection of intellectual, of collective intellectual property, I think. Because culture is intangible, culture is always shifting. I remember in one of the workshops, someone asked, shall we protect the Buddhas of Banyam in Afghanistan, or shall we also protect the destruction of the Buddhas of Banyan? Because that's also a cultural act. You know, the iconoclasm, should it also be protected? Should we protect, for instance, the bullfights with the bullfights where the bull is killed in Barrancos in Portugal, because it's a cultural heritage? Shall we declare that the Holocaust was a masterpiece of cultural meanness and aggressivity? All these things didn't really make sense. I couldn't fit many of these things with what was being proposed. And in the end, what it really annoyed me was this divide between intangible and tangible. The declaration, the World Declaration that tangible and intangible heritage are to be split and separated. And that sounded to me as a cultural imperialism. That is one way trying to impose, or one view trying to impose itself on all other views. And this was really the negation, the denial of the protection of cultural diversity. If we are to impose a cultural view on what heritage is as being a dualistic separate, and we separate tangible and intangible, then we are denying all the procedure. So it was a big paradox. And so what I tried in my little text was to balance my relation to drawing as a possibility of transcending these differences between what is material and immaterial, what is in the brain and what is in outside reality, with the issues of heritage and cultural heritage, and to question to which extent drawing cannot be a possibility to question all these verbal categories that the West relies so much upon and tries to impose on other cultures. So that was my intention. I hope it was understood, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ramos, for your valuable words. I would like to invite Jonathan Nishim-Gage. He is another collaborator of us. We were working in another project with him. I will briefly introduce him. He is a social anthropologist studying international development, religion, self-accomplishment, and education in East Africa. He has many other feathers in his hat, but on his request, I keep it short. He currently serves as Humboldt Fellow at the Arnold Brustreiser Institute in Freiburg. In addition, he is a research fellow at the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva, where he is a deputy PI on the Franco-Swiss research project Salmiya. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Haddad. Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Everything's all right? Okay, so I'm gonna First of all, just thanking everyone working on a book. It's such a big thing, and I'm really entering very late in the process. So yeah, chapeau to everyone who participated and prepared this. I had a quick look at the book, and it looks really interesting. I look forward to reading it properly. So I will share my presentation with you. So I was in, can you see it? I was in Lisbon for about 6 months this winter, and I got to know Nevena and then also Shajad, and even went to Evora and spent some time there. And when we started talking, we realized that actually we have a lot in common. Even though I don't draw and I don't work with graphic methods, I'm very, very interested in phenomenological approaches from another angle in relation to my research on international development. In particular, I'm interested in the afterlives of development interventions. So what happens after a project, if it's let's build a clinic, if building a dam, if it's building a model village, and what happens after a project ends. And together with Shajad and Nevena, we decided that as part of a course that I'm teaching this semester here in Freiburg, I'm currently in Freiburg in Germany, we will give a 2-session workshop in which we will be exploring phenomenological methods and try to link the work of each of them and my own work, and also work of a colleague of mine, I'll mention her name in a second, together with the theme of development projects. And we didn't really know where it's going to go and how it's going to turn out. And I think it was really interesting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the workshop. It really was just last month, really. So very fresh. And I think it shows some interesting paths for future collaboration. So let me move ahead. So I'm teaching at the University College in Freiburg. It's under the University of Freiburg here in the beautiful Black Forest in southern Germany. And the course is called Research in International Development, Development Studies, Interventions, and their intended and unintended consequences. So I'm interested in conceptions of success and failure in international development, who decides what is happening de facto while we are arguing that we are, putting into practice a certain program, a certain plan, and the role of local actors. And I think one quote that really captures it quite well by James Ferguson, he says, in a joint article, but it's mainly Ferguson's ideas, rather than repeatedly asking the politically naive question, can aid programs ever be made really to help poor people? Perhaps we should investigate the more searching question, what do aid programs do besides fail to help poor people? So this is, I guess, an intentionally provocative statement, but I think it does the trick in taking us beyond the question of whether we are succeeding or failing in international development to look at what is happening where we are often not looking, with regard to international development. And I think the sort of methods that are explored in the book are really interesting for teasing out some of that information. So just very briefly, to give you a sense, because I know this is outside the purview of what's been discussed so far. So just to give you an indication of the sort of things that I'm interested in. So this is from one study based on data from the World Bank. Since 2016, the World Bank says that 76% of its projects were successful. At the same time period, the World Bank also admits that half of the projects have an uncertain future. Okay, they are at significant or high risk that this kind of success would not continue. And of course, the forward-looking prism is extremely important, right? And in a way, the story only begins once the experts leave the stage. And so I began capturing and reflecting on the material remains of development interventions, and they're not just material. Of course, we talked about tangible and intangible, and the way that stories related to past development interventions are reappropriated over time. And I work mainly in East Africa. So some of the points that we emphasize is really the question: whose reality count? Why are we doing development? Who is in charge of the narrative? Thinking beyond formal indicators, beyond numbers, beyond GDP, capturing local voices, thinking beyond the temporal horizon of a project cycle, to see what's happening after, but also what happened before. Development actors often forget, tend to be quite myopic and amnesiacs. Playing with perspectives, recognizing gaps between knowledge of experts and knowledge of locals and different actors, recognizing the importance of working with local voices, so participation. Put a picture of Robert Chambers, who's been really an important figure in this perspective, and thinking about the aesthetics of ruins and development's afterlives. And actually, I have a lot more to, I think, reflect on with regard to the aesthetics of ruin that I think is also relevant to this theme that we're exploring today. But maybe we can also discuss it a little later. So we organized a workshop. We called it Tracing Afterlives Methodological Exercise. We took 2 3-hour sessions as part of this course of mine. And Nevena participated, and Shajad very kindly volunteered to be guest facilitators, along with a friend of mine from Israel. Her name is Manya Kagan, and she's a specialist on photo voice and working with photographic data. She's doing her PhD as well on the life experiences of asylum-seeking children in Uganda. So did photo voice exercises with children in schools. So Shajad presented his perspective with regard to participatory and interpretative mapping. Manya spoke about the visual toolkit of taking photos and collaborative photography, and Nevena spoke about phenomenology and walking and drawing and the value of that. And this is an artistic representation thanks to PowerPoint filters of the sessions. Together we offered students, or they offered students, this kind of basket of tools. And then the students had an assignment to build a layered narrative related to a place. Okay, it was pretty open. Students are quite advanced and very smart and resourceful. So we kept it intentionally open. And I want to briefly just share with you 2 examples of what students have come up with, of course, with their permission, just so you get a sense of where I think this kind of set of methods could go. So this is by a student, and she has a dog called Aska that she really likes. And she decided that she is going to focus her exercise on the experiences of her dog vis-a-vis her experiences while she's taking Aska on their daily walks. And I thought this is an interesting example, not only because she did it really well, but also because she used all 3 forms of methods. So she used interpretive mapping, drawing walks, and photo voice. So these are the maps that she drew, and then she united them into a single one. She looked at the excitement level and the agitation and walkable spaces and sounds based on the 2 actors, her and Aska, along their walks. You can see along the river in Freiburg, a very beautiful area. And then she asked her parents who came to visit to do the same walk and take photos. And then she did elicitation. What did her parents see in those photos, and how that varied from her experience and from Aska's experience. Yeah, and then she did some drawing walks also with Aska. She dwelled in particular on those points that on the map she saw were places where Aska tends to be quite agitated, and she wrote some beautiful texts around that. So here, for example, a tennis court, whenever they passed by the tennis court, she felt that Aska is getting agitated, and she herself is also responding to that. And she kind of concluded, and tried to be as short as possible, with kind of a comparison between her experience, Aska's experience, and her parents' experience as reflected through the photos. So I thought this was really an interesting way of combining methods. But it's still quite far from international development, right? Which I think is all kind of an inbuilt tension in this course that we're teaching. And I want to give you a very short, a different example. So I will conclude and say that I think there's a lot of promise in involving more methods of this sort in research related to international development, and also in development practice, I believe, because it links so well to participatory methods and in thinking about development beyond simple top-down engineering projects. So these are the emphases that I've mentioned. And this, for example, is a photo from a site that I studied in Tanzania. You can see Lake Victoria in the distance. And I think this picture, for you as people who work with images, I think this picture speaks for itself. It's not just the tangible remains and ruins of what used to be an agriculture cooperative project, but there's so many stories and experiences and people that day to day continue to engage with this site, who's been in ruin for over 50 years. So I think it would be really, really interesting to apply some of these methods in such a case. And I'll end with a quote by one of the students. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly how she said it. But when we started discussing students' own projects, one of the students mentioned that it's the first time that she started thinking that international development could somehow connect to what she said. She said poetry. And I thought that was just a very, I thought this was really striking because I also never thought of connecting international development with poetry, but why not, right? Especially if we want to better reflect people's own needs and have a deeper understanding of what is happening. Yeah, so I hope this was interesting. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for this thought-provoking presentation and reflection on our collaboration. And to conclude this part of the event, I now, with great pleasure, invite Professor Felipe Temuda Barata. Professor Felipe is the founding and current member of the UNESCO Chair for Intangible Heritage and Traditional Know-how Linking Heritage. Since the end of 2020, he is a professor emeritus at the University of Évora, where he worked as full professor since 2004, teaching several disciplines and seminars connected with history, heritage, and museology, especially in the context of the Mediterranean. Besides pro bono work in these fields, over the span of his career, he also worked as a member, professor, and manager in numerous international and national academic networks and projects, some of them being CIDOS Research Center of the University of Évora, University Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, and Cape Verde University. Professor Felipe.
Thank you, Nevena. Well, I should begin to say, to be a Jubilee professor, it is not a good idea. It means that I reach a lot of ears. Let begin, start from the beginning in the presentation of this book. I am, during, I don't know, 30 or 40 years, I work in heritage. Landscape heritage, for many reasons, doesn't matter. And I think I was, shall I say, a regular coordinator about the hundreds of theses, master theses I have coordinated along my life. But I think I have 2 or 3 moments I'd like very much to underline today. The first thing is when I present to UNESCO my will to organize a chair, it was about half history, half heritage. And the answer of UNESCO was, look, we have a problem. It was, I'm in the year of 2005, 24 or 5, yes. And they told me, look, could you could you remain with a chair in intangible heritage? Because we have a convention and we don't know very well what to do about it. This is when I accept this chair. It was the first in the world about intangible heritage, by the way. And I start there. And I thought it was a regular thing too. I mean, in the tangible heritage, as we used to this kind of words, we take photos, we do field work and so on. And suddenly with intangible heritage, nobody knew very well what to do. And even I have, I think one of the first European projects about the heritage that I like very much called the Identity is the Future. I think it is also begin in 2005. But this is not so important as what happened these last years. I would like very much to underline, I have 2 students. I don't know, this is very, very dark. Okay, I have 2 students. They presented me works very strange. The first one was Nevena. She tried to present me, shall I say like that, something that I never thought about. It was the silence as a heritage. You remember that, Nevena? And I was really surprised. The silence as heritage? And the other student, I have another student also that helped me to see these problems about the draw, but the other student that also present me not a work, but a painting, a sketch of myself when I take the Jubilee was Sajad. The interesting part is he looked at me in the different way that I look at myself. This is the interesting part, because one thing with another student nowadays that I push to draw, one thing that I understood is the draw make us understand better the heritage and people. This is also for me a surprise. So don't be surprised if I organize nowadays a local festival for sketchers, because I was so much committed with this thing that now that I understood the importance of the draw. It's true not only to know better a person, to know better the heritage, but also the performance they have in the public space, and the push they are able to give to public art. This is something I have no time to say this, but what I'd like very much to testify is that I have the opportunity to and the luck to have these 2 students. They helped me so much to do this, to understand this. So I just must thank to Nevena and Sajad what they have helping me to do. I hope to make it better for performance as professor. Well, it's true. Now I'm finishing my career, it comes later. And my only regret, it is not that one. My only regret is I am not able to draw. I cannot draw, but I really can appreciate, and I know to recognize those that are able to do so. And this is what I really like in this book. The capability of Nevena to draw, of course, but also to call up other people to do the same, to define an objective for a meeting where it is possible to do so also, and to exemplify the importance of this kind of activity. So for many reasons, not only to be my students, not only to be nice persons, but also to be good drawers and good publishers, by the way, and editors. So my congratulations. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you to inviting me.
Thank you, Professor Felipe. With this, we have now completed this part of the event, and we can proceed with answering some questions. In opening discussion, we would also like to invite other contributors who are present here to share their insights, and also maybe we can interact and reflect on the overall themes that are addressed in the talks today. Would someone, maybe Anna or Filipa, like to say something?
Yes, I could.
Pedro?
Maybe I could start. I don't know. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you, Nevena, for inviting me for the presentation, for the workshop. We didn't know each other. We had a meeting in Lisbon. At that time, I was finishing my case studies in Lisbon. So it was an opportunity for me to present my work, the work that I did in 3 laboratories, to present it at your workshop. And it was very nice for me to do the exercise to make a synthesis of what I was doing and comparing the 3 laboratories that I did with children, with senior, and with young people in a neighborhood in Lisbon, in Moraria. And with the presentation I did in your workshop, it helped me also to compare the results. So it was for me the right moment. I think your invitation arrived in a very nice moment for me to make the conclusions of that work, and I could present it at the workshop. And also it was very nice for me also when I was there to see how different is when we do research on representation, because each of the researchers that we presented, can you hear me? Yes. We had a different type of, we were using the technique of representation in a different way. So it was very rich. The same tool, the concept of representation as a tool for research has is very rich as a methodology. And that is what we could understand from each other and learn from each other, that the methodology of representation is, it can go very deep and is very rich, and actually it helps a lot to settle ideas, and it helps a lot for analysis, for characterization, for comparison, and also when you do bottom-up research and you ask other people to draw for you, as I did, it's very interesting because when you draw yourself, you draw as an architect, or you draw as a researcher, and you have a certain view of things. But when you ask people from that, they don't know how to draw, or they don't know how to tell us a story, a narrative. It's very interesting what appears. Also to research how people can use the tool, the narrative of explain a story by your hand or by performance, because actually when you draw is a performance, and it's what we did in Cromelech. No, it's called in Cromelech. When all of us we arrived there, actually we performed with our bodies in the place. People were sitting on the rocks, or they were sitting next to the rocks, or they're walking around. It was beautiful. And I think the representation is also a performance, and everybody can perform and can explain story. And doesn't need to be a nice drawing. It was when I was in my laboratories, I was saying to my participants, we are going to do things with plastic arts. Maybe it's the first time for you that you draw something. Or with senior, I was working with collages, and I was saying to them, okay, we are not going to draw, we are going to cut and paste, and you are going to tell a story cutting and pasting. But it's not important that it's beautiful, actually. It's not important the aesthetics. What is important is the story you are telling. And that is the heritage, actually. All the stories, all the collective stories that tell the story that is happening in the now. But actually, every story holds the past. Each of us, and it is what I experienced in the laboratories that I did, is that each of the participants is telling a story from the past in the present, is interpreting the past in the present, and actually is living the present, and always carrying the past. And I think what we did in Cromelech was the same. We found the place as this mystic space that was holding the past, and all of us interpreted it. All of us, and what is very beautiful in the book that Sajat and Nevena edited for us is that all the interpretations of that past in different ways, in colors, shadows, textures, everything is there. So it's these different layers of information, and was beautiful. I think we did a very beautiful work. So it was very nice idea, Nevena, when you did the workshop, to make us also draw, to make us also participate performatively. It was very beautiful. So I enjoyed a lot, actually. It was very nice. And thank you very much for the book. It's beautiful, very beautiful edited, both of you. You did a very nice edition of the book. I was amazed when I opened it, and I'm very curious to read it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna, for your words and also for your participation both in the book and the workshop. Filipa, would you like to share something?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I want to say thank you, Nevena, and also the others for this edition. It was also a very good experience to be in Évora in 2019. Actually, my perspective as an artist, I think all the ones who were in the conference, me was we are the only one who were seeing ourselves as artists, and for me was very nice the experience of sharing ideas of drawing with other people that draw but they are not artists, because it's always a different way of looking at things. I'm not so much with the idea of representation, because in my side it's more like interpretation or subjectivity, and this is more with senses. So in my PhD it's about drawing, and actually I work with drawing from memory, not what you see but what you reflect on what you see. So it's a other way, and actually I thought that immaterial heritage, it's something about that also, because for example when you are representing a monument, it's stuck like a photography, you know, but then if you start putting other things that it's a reflection of something that people, how people use that monument, how stories interview with that particular moment in history, that it's from a bigger view, but it also has connected with different kinds of views that people, local people from there. So we have another dimension of drawing that maybe can be research, I think. But I think all the perspectives are important and they are very interesting. And for me, it was really a nice experience to be there. And I think the addiction is amazing, and the possibility to share knowledge with other people that are researching with other areas of research. It's really important. It's nowadays, it's very important, interdisciplinarity. So for me, it was really a rich encounter, and thank you all for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Filipe. Are there some other comments or questions? No? Okay, I would like to pose a question for all the speakers. It is something that came to me during Professor Ramos' presentation and also Jonathan's talk. In the light of all the disciplines and researchers that are today involved in the study of heritage or using drawing, but who are not directly associated or do not relate with drawing as something that is intuitive, how can we then turn or translate something that is seemingly so abstract into something empirical? And is it possible at all? Is someone maybe ready to reflect on this?
Can you explain a little better what you mean by which is, you say, what is empirical, what is theoretical, abstract? Is drawing empirical or abstract?
Can I say something?
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, can I say something?
Okay.
Look, I agree, not only because we have the same name, Filipe and Filipe, we have the same, it is not because of that. But I think it is interesting with the draw, and it is an interpretation. And the interesting part is this interpretation, most of the time, means to look at something that another observer is not able to see. And this is the interesting part of this kind of draws. It is an interpretation is not just a subjective thing. It is subjective in a sense. It is a personal interpretation of something. The point is, it helps the other that never think about, look at the same problem in the same way. He suddenly understand there is others ways to look at the same object. This is the interesting part. And this is why I think this is, by the way, this is what I tried to explain when I was very surprised when Sajjad looked at me in a very different way that I look myself in the mirror. And I was very surprised with the way he looked at me and how it is possible. I never thought it was possible to draw the silence. Really, I never thought it is possible to draw the silence until I meet Nevena. So it is something that helps us to look at another point of the same issue. And this is why I appreciate very much what Philippa said. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what is about. Art is about.
Okay, to answer Professor Ramos, I was asking exactly about this because we are working in the context of interdisciplinarity, and for researchers who do not relate to art or artistic expression, drawing will forever seem a bit abstract and subjective. How can we use it as a methodology? Because it will be always about a variety of different ways of looking.
I might say something that's completely wrong, but there is Mariana Soler. She has the mic on, so it's making lots of noises. I was appreciating the silence now. I think that, of course, well, I've done a lot of workshops and presentations on drawing, and one thing I always try to tackle right at the beginning is this cliche: I can't draw. You know, because there are people say I can draw, other people, oh, I can't draw. You know, and it's very easy to dismantle this cliche. You just say, well, can you make an A? Can you write an A? And people, yeah, I can write an A. Can you write a B? I can write a B. So you've drawn an A and you've drawn a B. So drawing is not what sometimes we think it is. I mean, drawing is using an extension of a material extension in your hand to make a trait on a surface. That is drawing, I think. I can't, I know, of course, we all know what this means. I can't draw a face in a way that can resemble the accepted version of what a face should be. That is, I don't have the qualifications, the control over my hand to produce something that other people can understand as something that can be recognizable as a Philippe, for instance, or a Philippa. But that to me is an whole other issue in terms of research, in terms of use of drawing for research, or drawing or using graphic methods to research. I think that is on the side of not on the side of production, but of course it impinges on production, of course, but it's more on the side of sharing and communication. Whereas, at least how I think it's valuable in anthropology, that is, drawing in the field or using graphic methods in the field, is using this material extension of your brain to work things out for yourself, as a control to your work. So it is you could say, oh, that's very selfish. That is you're looking too much to yourself and not thinking about the social uses of drawing. But that's what I think is quite valuable in fieldwork, is the freedom to use to write and to draw and to take photos, to do whatever you want, in order to to capture a reality that cannot be simply reduced to verbal communication. That is, of course, many things can be verbalized, but when you verbalize and when you expect other people to verbalize, you're already playing a game that reduces your knowledge and reduces the capacity of other people to communicate also their knowledge. So that's how I would consider. So in a way, I don't see this as abstract at all. It's very empirical. That's why I asked the question. For me, it's quite basic. And of course, if people prefer to draw A's and B's and C's instead of drawing lines and squares, that's just their option. On the issue of let me try to say this nicely. Of course, we all think that there's originality, and we are thinking, we produce things that are different from each other. But if you look at the drawings in Almendras, in the Chromec, they all seem more or less the same, because they're just rocks. And how do you do rocks? You do the rocks. Oh, okay, it's an egg shape or whatever. So in a way, even though the medium are different and the styles are different, they all, in a way, sort of look more or less the same. But if you'd ask, for instance, let's put it this way, if you'd ask an Australian, an Aborigines Australian to depict the cromlech, I would be sure, well, maybe I'm wrong, but they wouldn't do egg-shaped things. They would probably do lots of round shapes, because they tend to look at things, to depict graphically things from above and not from people's view, from my view. So in a way, we're all sort of thinking that we're all doing different things and having different perspectives and creative and innovative and original and personal perspectives. In a way, we are just reproducing a way of seeing that is 2,000, 3,000 years old. It is the Greco-Roman Christian, Greco-Roman, well, not Jewish, Christian view of the world.
May I ask a question to Professor Manuel João Ramos, Nevena?
Yes.
Okay, this is less, it is much more a challenge than a question. Can you see this?
Yeah.
What is this?
It's a nice drawing. It's a nice drawing of a musical partition.
I don't know if it is, because I don't know nothing of music.
Yeah, but it's a nice drawing.
Of music?
No,
I don't know nothing of music. It is not so simple what you are saying about the interpretation, and it is not so simple. It is what I mean by that.
I didn't want to say it was simple. I was just saying that there's more connections between writing and drawing than people want to admit. That's my take. And there's more.
I agree.
There's more difference between drawing and photographing than people think of it, because drawing does not reproduce anything, does not represent anything. It imagines things and proposes. Proposes an image for imagination. That's what the writing does.
But I think Filipa is not agree absolutely with you. Filipa, I think she's not agreeing with you. Well, I don't want to discuss it, but I think she's not agreeing with you.
It's not to say that I don't agree with you, but I'm taking drawing the field in a totally different way. So it's not just opposite. It's kind of another way of questioning what drawing is and what it could be. because I'm using, for example, in my workshops, such workshops I did with students, art students, we did workshops on field work.
It's easy.
We are not an anthropologist, so we're taking anthropology as something else, like you are an anthropologist and using drawing for other purposes. So it's different way, for example. And then the students I work with, they use drawing. They are really good drawers, and then they could not draw so efficiently because I asked them to feel things, not to look at it. So it's another way of putting the question. It's not the right place to discuss this, but maybe one day. Thank you.
Can I say something? I think it's the different dimensions and different dimensions of drawing. A very important Portuguese art historian that lived between the 19th and 20th century, he died in 1936, and is speaking about the advantage of photography to art history, and speaking about the advantage of photography to study the art objects. But he said that drawing was still the best way to art historians understand the object. Drawing the object is the best way to understand that object, the configuration of that object. So the drawing as a way of knowledge also, but that's not is incompatibilized with knowledge as interpretation and as a way of creation, different dimensions, I think.
Professor Balan and Jonathan, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'm just finding the discussion incredibly fascinating, because there is an assumption a lot of the time that's been picked up on about somebody can draw well or somebody can't draw. And I think we've got to be very careful of those making those sort of distinctions. Because drawing is many, many things, and I think that's what we're trying to uncover at the moment and discover. And when I say discover, I think drawing is something. It's about some sort of discovery. We begin to discover and understand the world through different ways of engaging with the world. And we can engage with the world in so many different ways. And drawing is one of the most important ways I think we can kind of begin to see, begin to look, to understand. We can, it can be a tool for kind of communication, but it's far more than that. And it's not simply about drawing that face so somebody can recognize it, with every kind of every detail present. I think somebody said that it's a mark on a surface and a trace on a surface, and I think that's its first point. And we do that we can do that very, very early on in our lives as children, and there at some point we begin to say, he can draw, she can draw, I can't draw, because we kind of get to a point where we think there's a sort of particular standard that we have to be party to, which is a terrible shame. I have great admiration for somebody who can draw with a great deal of kind of observation and representation, but I equally have great admiration for somebody who can make a gesture or a mark, that's to indicate a feeling. And I have equal admiration for how drawing can be applied in different situations. I currently lead a research centre at the University of Brighton on arts and well-being, and we invited a surgeon into to talk to us. He's a surgeon who draws. He's a surgeon who works on operations on the hand. So in order to make a diagnosis, he makes a drawing. He takes the drawing into the operation theatre. He uses the drawing as when he's working with his with the surgeons and the doctors and the nurses in the operation theatre, and he presents a copy of the drawing after the hand has been. He redraws the hand after it's undergone surgery, and he presents that again to the patient. But he uses it drawing as a completely applied tool in order to understand and to discover and to resolve a situation. Equally, before Google Maps on our phones, we might ask somebody in the street, and equally before social distancing, we might say, which is the way to the train station? And somebody might just scribble down a very quick diagram. And that is incredibly useful. And that for me is a good drawing if it gets you to the train station. So I think it's many things.
Thank you. And Jonathan, would you like to say something? You were mentioning aesthetics of ruins and maybe to comment from the possible ways of using drawing in your own work.
Well, thank you. What I'm hearing is that there are more than two ways of approaching this, because I'm a total newcomer to the field. For me, as I understood it, as I kind of came to learn through Nevena and Judged in recent months, I could think of drawing as a kind of a reflexive process, me as the ethnographer, because I'm an anthropologist, so me trying to understand what is happening, taking the time. There's perhaps a performative element to it, and you get to know people through that, and you know, and you do your own observation. The other way of doing it is to use participatory methods, right? I mean, it was mentioned, I think, in the case of Moria and working with local populations and what they produce. For me, this kind of, this is a core dichotomy of either me as the ethnographer doing this or using this as something of a kind of elicitation method, a little bit similar to photo voice. And yeah, so are we talking about, I mean, I wonder if this is, if this way that I have built it in my head is correct, corresponds to what how you guys see this, or am I missing something through this duality?
Any thoughts?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So I don't know if I completely understand it, but I think one of the things that I would say is that drawing isn't about an imitation. There's something that becomes very real through the process of drawing. Something new emerges. So it's not simply a kind of a reflection or an imitation of something seen, or even an imitation of a feeling. It actualizes things. I would say that's really, really crucial to an understanding of drawing for me, that it makes real. Yeah, it makes real, it doesn't imitate.
I want to say something, add something with that. I think maybe drawing could be what you aim to. It can be also a representation. It can be abstract. It can be so many things. It depends on what you aim to. That's why it's so fascinating, because it's so wider and you can use it in so many ways. even of course, me as an artist, I use it in different ways as an historian or an architect or a graphic designer, but actually we can we can mingle also and have in between genres. But I think that's the main thing of drawing. It can be so many things. That's why it's fascinating. That's my own view. I have my own perspective, and I use it in a very precise way. Not precise, but in a very subjective way. But I think that there are so many other ways, very interesting also to use it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, engineers draw, architects draw. It's an incredibly broad term. So, you know, we can try and pin it down, but I think, you know, it's one of those quite porous kind of disciplines, which are used by you know, as I said, we draw from an early age, and then we stop, or some of us stop. Some of us stop and start again. You know, but it's something that goes across and cuts across many different disciplines. I would say really does, and that's why I think it's interesting to have a range of people here today who kind of express those kind of can kind of look at those from different perspectives and from different particular disciplines.
Can I intervene?
Mm.
Yeah. I think what Jonathan was saying is, I think it really, in a way, it's a good portrait of how, at least in anthropology, people have been dealing with drawing or with imagery. I think there's definitely one pole. I wouldn't say there's necessarily a duality where there's a separation between one thing and the other, but there's definitely one pole where you use drawing as a complement or a supplement to your work during field work. That is either because you like it or because you need to either to draw a map or to whatever. I think the drawing can be a personal tool during field work. Even if you're not working on imagery, or if you're not working on graphism or on the visual. On the other hand, there's quite a lot of work done on how different societies produce images, and how imagery is processed, and there's lots of instances of eliciting drawing, for instance, in the Amazon in Amazonic societies or communities to offer a material testimony of a myth. For instance, you can draw a myth, for instance, and so you can use these testimonies as part of your research into how people look at things. And in between, there's lots of possibilities and alternatives. If I think of my work, for instance, in Ethiopia, you know, my first drawings in Ethiopia, in a way, they are very Corto Maltese looking drawings. There's definitely, I sort of recognize some inspiration on Hugo Pratt's sort of drawing, because Hugo Pratt was in Ethiopia. He lived since a young age in Ethiopia, and in a way, even if I did, it was not. It was a very reflexive thing. I didn't, you know, I was not thinking, oh, let's choose Hugo Pratt to depict Ethiopia. It was not like this at all. But I can recognize that my drawings, in a way, they look a bit like Hugo Pratt's drawings of Ethiopia. But I was not, it was just a spontaneous way of making use of a style and a way of depicting that was practical to me. My more recent drawings are completely different because they incorporate Ethiopian ways of depicting depicting scenes and doing presenting sequences and narratives with a style that is very foreign, from very deep. Well, it's very far from my usual style of drawing, because what I'm now interested in is in trying to dialogue with Ethiopians on issues that are a bit traumatic, namely the present war in northern Ethiopia. And so depends on what your goals are. You can use, of course, different ways of drawing, and you can use drawing in different ways, and eliciting drawing. That's something that's also very interesting. I did this in northern Portugal with a colleague. I've done this in India, and it's very interesting to be able to induce students, namely in Gujarat, to draw things that matter to them. And of course, as Philip said, I was surprised because many things that they were drawing wouldn't be the things that I would draw in a street, for instance. They were.
Yeah. Can I say something about because I know we must finish, but I like very much this last intervention of Manuel João, because I think it is exactly, we are much more close than we thought at the beginning. The different levels, the different types, the different objectives, the different purpose of drawing. And I think it is, look, I invited Nevena and Sajad to organize another discussion about exactly this subject. Now, perhaps the good idea is to remember the book.
Okay, if this is all, we can now slowly close. I give word to Sajad for this.
Okay, thank you, Nevena. It was absolute delight to listen to the speakers today on the occasion of the book launching. And it was fascinating to see how this little book intrigued a storm instead of teacup in the Zoom session. Well, in a gentle manner. And whether the drawing is a interpretation, or if it is imagination, or if it is beyond, if it becomes institutional recognized protocol beyond our personal note, it is very important to be established through research and sharing thoughts between us like this. So unfortunately, we don't have much time today. We need to close. I thank everyone who joined virtually through Zoom and YouTube, Facebook. We will be delighted if you found the book useful and inspirational. We'd love to hear your feedback about the book, and a very good afternoon to everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.